Welcome again to the Developer Tribe. Thank you for taking the time to listen, and to everyone who's reached out so far. This podcast delves into the processes and practices of coaches, educators and beyond, offering their insight and giving us cause to reflect. Thank you for being here, however you got here. And with that, let's jump in. My guest today is a performance psychologist and executive coach who has 12 plus years working with the mental training of athletes, coaches and teams, including Ghent, and with the Belgian FA, where he leads the performance psychology task force. Recently, he has extended this work to coaching an esports team, an experience we'll get into later in the pod. He has many publications on this subject, including The Sport Brain and Get a Head Start, and has recently put together online resources to help coaches build psychological skills in themselves and their players. A wealth of experience and knowledge, it gives me great pleasure to welcome Kris Perquy. Hi, how are you today, Kris?
I'm doing really well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, really good. Thank you for being here. On that esports team, I watched a video on YouTube that briefly showed some of your work with them. Tell us about how that came about and your experience.
Well, actually, that was one of life's coincidences, as you sometimes experience. I was in Seoul in South Korea, just visiting family, and I happened to in the breakfast room happened to start talking to somebody from my hometown here in Bruges, and that was the father of one of the gamers who was in Seoul for the World Championships. So I'm just speaking during breakfast in our local dialect, pass me the sugar, led to an interesting conversation. And as it happened, they were looking for a performance psychologist at that time. And this guy knew me because we living in the same town, and he had heard of my work in football, and he introduced me to the management team, and that's how it started.
Great. What a moment of serendipity that's so common in our networking, including how we came across each other. So how was your experience with them? Did it differ much from working with professional athletes?
It was a great experience, and it is a great experience. I worked with them very intensively last season. So the team is based in Berlin, and I was with them, let's say every 2 weeks, a couple of days with the team. They're a League of Legends team, so 5 players, 2 coaches, a video analyst. So there are some similarities with professional football, and but also some big discrepancies. I mean, these guys are in the office gaming from midday until almost midnight. So that's the typical working day, working 8 to 10 hours straight, which is a little bit different than in professional football. So I work with the players on your performance psychology issues. We worked on focus, we worked on confidence, we worked on dealing with setbacks, we worked on preparing for high pressure moments, so which is pretty similar than in traditional sports, I would say. But then the nature of the game makes it also very, very different. Well, I could go on for hours about the game and about working with the team, but it has been a real pleasure.
Sounds like a fantastic experience, and I'm sure there'll be more that you'll put out for us to take in about it at another time. You mentioned they have a couple of coaches, and I really wanted to speak to you about the development of coaches and what you've done with your performance psychology task force. There's a conference online all about football where you speak for an hour about developing psychological skills in players, And as part of that, you speak about the coach developing their own self-awareness as really a crucial starting point, which also forms part of chapter 2 of the Sport Brain book. Could we start by talking about how you go about supporting coaches in developing this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for coaches, insight, awareness, self-awareness, and insight into their own personality, their own coaching style, their own approach towards players is absolutely crucial. And in my experience, the past decade here in Belgium with coaches, I've been amazed sometimes at the quality of this self-awareness, but also at the total absence of self-awareness. It's sometimes mind-blowing, I would say, that coaches have quite a bit of experience, but still, have the same approach, use the same approach year after year with different teams, and start from the paradigm. I am who I am, take it or leave it, right? I have my style, and without even being aware of some of the pitfalls or disadvantages of that style, and the impact that can have on a team. So I like to start with self-awareness, and with the analogy, like in a when you're in a plane, and cabin pressure drops, and the masks fall down, you need to take care of yourself first, right, before you can take care of your children next to you. And it's the same analogy, or it's the same situation, I would say, with coaches. You need to build your own awareness, you need to build your own resilience, for example, also, before you can take care of the team, and before you can really understand the player. If you do not take the time to analyze yourself, analyze your own behavior, analyze your own reactions to certain situations, how can you choose the right approach to players in specific situations? Because they will have different reactions based on their personality and their experience. So that's why I think it's absolutely necessary as a coach, to do this analysis. You don't have to go to a psychoanalyst or a psychotherapist to do an in-depth or Freudian analysis. Far from that, but you need to spend a little bit of time to be aware of your strengths as a coach, your style, your personality. That's absolutely crucial.
Would you say that's what sets apart those coaches that you've worked with that have that self-awareness over those, as you said, it's a little mind-blowing that they don't have it?
Often, yes. Often, yes. And I think if you read interviews with some of the most successful coaches in football, they will tell you that the first years in their career, they will have spent on the technical side of football, the tactical side of football, the physical side of football, and only later on in their career, they have been focusing on the social side, psychological side, the mental side of football. And I think, if I remember correctly, it was Arsène Wenger who said that, football, just like that, like I explained it, that he used to spend most of the time looking at the football side, and later on in his career focusing mainly on the psychology side. I need to look up the exact quote, but I think it was Wenger who also said that.
I wonder if that's an authenticity thing of being able to make sure that you have conviction in your knowledge and communicating that with the players in terms of football know-how. And then it's only in gaining that confidence that we as coaches feel like we can start to work on this other stuff that's a little more intangible. How would you go about getting a young coach and an experienced coach who reacts that way, focus mainly on the technical or tactical elements, to really open them up and think a little more deeply about what they're doing?
Well, I think we in the coach education, it's important that we include these psychological aspects and the coaching aspects early on in the program, and that's what we have done here in Belgium. Include sports psychology early on in the different steps of the coach education and the certification process. Um, because for coaches, it has to be something that is uh, part of football. So it's just part of the equation. It's not something that comes later on, or if yeah, if you're well experienced in the tactical and technical side, it's something that we need to offer straight away, and build it into the curriculum of football coaches. Um, and I think for sports psychologists like myself, that is still a challenge that we have, and an issue that we're still struggling with, that we tend to see it too much from a psychology perspective and not enough from a football coach perspective. Yeah, and that has, I think, contributed a little bit to the situation today where psychologists in football are still considered like rare species, right? And not yet 100% part of the coaching staff, where they should be an assistant coach, part of the coaching staff of the manager or the head coach, and just having the expertise in psychology, the mental side, the social side, with players. So I think we as a professional group, or professional body have failed up till now to market ourselves in the right way, and to promote ourselves in this manner, that we are just assistant coaches, just like a physical coach with his expertise can help the head coach, can be responsible for part of the warming up, or a player who is coming back from injury doing some individual work with the strength and conditioning coach. I think the mental coach has exactly the same role, with a special expertise, that is, and he can go much more in depth than the head coach can, because you only have so many hours in the day with your team, obviously. So as a head coach, it's good to have then the specialist available who can do a little bit more in-depth work with the players, improving their concentration skills, improving their emotional regulation skills. So on the mental training side, I would say.
Sure. I've had the chance to speak to some coaches in elite youth football here recently through my research, and many of them speak about the multidisciplinary team and the sports psychologist as part of that. With the online resources that you've been developing for coaches, I wonder if you could speak about those, just in terms of, a lot of the coaches listening are very likely won't have that support like in the elite environment, but no doubt will want to feel like they're still having a positive impact on the young people they're working with and developing psychological skills both in themselves and the players. So how does a coach really go about doing that when they don't have the regular support of a sports psychologist?
Yeah. Well, I think there's excellent knowledge available, on sports psychology, and more specifically also on football psychology. There's been uh, good work from colleagues like Bill Beswick in the UK, um, other colleagues, Dan Abrams with his podcast on Sports Psych Show, his ebooks on sports psychology. I mean, there's a lot of material out there, and my recommendation for football coaches would be to spend some time in finding out a couple of books if you're somebody who likes to read, or tune into a couple of podcasts, and then build your knowledge. And then a second recommendation would be to have somebody in your environment to use as a sounding board, to work with a couple of peers who work maybe in your club or in a different club, and you can exchange experience, but in a targeted manner, where you say, okay, we're at the start of the season, we are building a team, we have X new players on the team, so we have to restart the whole team building process. This is my plan, what I would like to do. I have a team building session planned with 2 days with the team, for example, off site. What is your experience? What should I do? Should that be just a fun exercise, or should I try to make the players do some assignments or things like that? Exchange knowledge with each other to become smarter. So if you don't have if you don't have the professional experts in your environment or in your club, there's plenty available.
I think in my own experience and speaking to many coaches over the years, there's that feeling of working in a silo sometimes and having an isolated experience, despite that there may well be many people around that you could have that community of practice with. In that conference I saw you present at online, one of the quotes that you have up on the screen says, "If it ain't broke, consider breaking it." And you were speaking about creating uncomfortable situations for players. Could you tell us more about what you mean by that?
This was one of the, of course, it's a quote to trigger some thinking and to trigger some discussion, and in a lot of the clubs and a lot of the teams I've worked with, I've encountered coaches who are very determined to create these difficult circumstances, who are convinced that football is a very tough game, and only the strong survive. And they think as coaches that they do players a favor if they add to the pressure and add to the stress. And in this way, creating discomfort and getting players out of the comfort zone. To this extent, I agree. But the disappointing fact that I have found in my experience is that coaches often stop there. So they create pressure for players by coaching in a very tough manner, for example, focusing on what is not going well, pointing out the mistakes, giving harsh feedback, because this is how they think they will build strong players. And my philosophy, and something that's been backed up by research time and time again, is that coaches have an incredible responsibility in building confidence with the players. And this is an aspect that they often they leave for the players. They expect that players take care of that aspect themselves. They need to believe in themselves, and it's not the role of coaches to do that. So when I say you need to create discomfort, we always use the 2 dimensions. One, create discomfort, establish goals that are not so easy to reach, but at the same time, make sure that in your coaching, you build confidence with your players. So make sure that you are aware what the top 3 strengths of this particular player are, and how he can use these strengths to achieve that ambitious goal. If you leave out the second dimension, and then we're obviously talking about positive coaching, we're talking about showing appreciation, we're talking about giving people explicit positive feedback in front of the whole team, celebrating success, celebrating progress that players are making. All these aspects are part of a process where you build confidence with your players. And if you don't invest in that second dimension as a coach, you're doing a poor job. So, and that's maybe then the theoretical framework. But when you look at the concept of flow, you have these 2 dimensions. You have, on the one hand, you have confidence in your own abilities, and on the other hand, you have a very ambitious very difficult challenge ahead of you. And these two situations, if you combine those, can create an opportunity for a flow performance. But regretfully, still to this day, we see a lot of coaches only working on these ambitious targets and creating pressure and adding to the pressure, from the philosophy that football is a tough game and only the mentally tough players will survive. So it's survival of the fittest, and I don't have any responsibility to help the players build confidence.
That's an excellent description, and I've certainly seen it where, and actually, there's oftentimes discussions flying around Twitter about the creation of those bumps in the road, but being wary of the language that's being used to describe that as trauma, the creation of trauma. And certainly within popular media, it's not uncommon to see this being portrayed as coming through a really rough upbringing or really tough coaching environment. But look at everything that I've achieved. And there's almost a success fallacy that goes with that and makes it difficult to question practice. It created this success, so therefore it must be effective. Of course, it's such a small percentage of athletes and coaches who gain that success. And I think we're starting to see a real change towards a more balanced, holistic approach and really generating that positive coach-athlete relationship, a really strong rapport and confidence in the players, as you described. Affords then, I've started calling it being a troublemaker as a coach. So slightly tongue-in-cheek, can I create a little bit of trouble for the players so that they have that challenge, but managing that challenge and support? Does that go some way to what you're describing?
Yeah. I would like to be a little bit more ambitious and say that, especially when working with youth coaches, you know that only, what is it, 1% or not even that of your players will become a professional player. Yeah. So I think we need to reframe our philosophy and focus on that 99% and say, what is my responsibility as a youth coach, helping these young players through their adolescence and reach adulthood as confident players and confident human beings. I think coaches have a tremendous responsibility, and it's one of the most beautiful jobs in the world, I would say, to help young people achieve that. And there's so many tools that coaches have to help players with building that confidence. And I'm convinced that everything that has to do with the pressure and the stress comes from the game itself, right? It's a complicated game. It's so many unpredictable parameters in the game. You have your opponent, you have the referee, you have all the conditions surrounding, and then at the higher levels you have the media, the exposure. So there's so much pressure that these players are under. Once you reach a decent level, why would you add to that pressure as a coach? Why don't you say, let's focus on building the platform, building the psychological muscle, building the resilience of the player, building the confidence of the player? And I can help you in so many ways as a coach, with my experience, with my background, with my insight in sports psychology. Yeah, I'm one of the people you can trust and you should trust, who is standing by your side in your journey towards adulthood and towards maybe life as a professional player.
Yeah, it's a privileged position that we have to take seriously, of course. And one of the tools you describe in your book is around catching them being good, in terms of trying to move to one side, that natural negativity bias that we as human beings have. As coaches, we want to be perfectionists. And also through some of the coach education that I've been through, it's, observe, find the problem, go and fix it. But as you're saying, and I'm fully in that camp, can we actually move that observation towards those more positive moments and traits that we want to see more of? How do you help coaches make that jump away from that natural negativity bias?
Yeah. what I found that works well is the concept of the double goal coaching. You've probably heard of it, and I'm sure, was it Professor Joan Duda, who also works a lot with self-regulation and self-monitoring. And so double goal coaching is about, it's not only about the result, it's also about the development. Yeah, so as a coach, you have always these two objectives. You always have a double goal. Yeah, you obviously you want to win the game, and obviously you prepare your team during the week for that game on Sunday, and all your players want to win that game. Yeah? So it makes no sense to try and pretend that the result is not important, the outcome is not important. It is, but at the same time, if you use a double goal philosophy, that means that you spend at least the same amount of energy and preparation into the process of developing your players, yeah, and developing your team. Yeah? Because at the end of the day, the outcome of the game, well, as we said, very uncertain. So many parameters that enter the equation. So very uncertain. So if you win the game by luck or because the ref gives you a penalty and you win 1-0 in the last minute, does that mean you need to be happy? Maybe not. Maybe you have been shouting at your players. Maybe players are just doing their own thing. Players are very negative towards each other. There's no sense of belonging whatsoever in the team, but still you win 1-0. Yeah. So if you have this double goal coaching, then you can much easier say, look, guys, we've won. So the outcome, yes, 1-0, we've won. But we have a double goal. We have a second goal. Yeah, we also focus on developing as a team. And I think today we have not progressed at all. Maybe we've taken 2 steps back. Even if I look at the performance that we have shown on the pitch today. So if you use the concept of double goal, it creates the opportunity to work with the players and to focus much more on developing. Yeah, and I think
you touch on something really important there, of especially in competition, being able to take that step back, maintain that perspective, and balance those mechanistic and humanistic values that you have working with players. It can be very difficult to do when in the throes of competition. I've experienced a lot of that myself, and maybe it's just through experience that I'm able to mostly, not always, put that to one side.
Yeah, and I would say sorry to interrupt, but so I would see that as like a step in between. Yeah, if focusing on the 99% of players who won't reach professional football, if that is too difficult for youth coaches today, and they want to continue to focus on the result and on the toughness of football, then this double goal coaching can be like an intermediary way to make that transition. But at the end of the day, I think as coach educators, as people contributing to building programs for coaches, I think we have the responsibility to focus on that 99% and or focus on the 100%, but being aware that targeting the confidence, helping build the confidence, helping build resilience, helping to build all these psychological aspects of players is so rewarding, not only on the football pitch, but also for dealing with all the difficulties that life will throw at these young people.
Yeah, absolutely. Preparing them for an alternative life and success with that. The statistic that pops up with British football is 0.01% of players that make it as a professional footballer. Perhaps in the Premier League, I can't remember exactly what the statistic meant, but 0.01% in any case gives a real sense of what our responsibilities may be in light of that. We've talked mostly about coaches. If we shift to players, you have a Get a Head Start workbook for young footballers, and I got a chance to take a look at it. There's a clear progression of the skills you're looking to develop through that. Could you talk about what those skills are and why they need to be worked on in that order?
Yeah, yeah. Maybe before talking about the specific skills, the philosophy of the book is that we think players should be in the driving seat in their development. Yeah, so and that's also backed by evidence, that people, when you can take control of your own development, you have much more autonomy, decision-making power, then you progress faster, you make bigger steps, and it's much more motivating, right? If you compare that to a maybe more traditional sports setting, where you have the survival of the fittest and players only follow instructions and just obey what coaches tell them to do, and then don't think for themselves. I think it's obvious that building autonomy with players is what we need to do, and that's certainly true for football, which is a complicated game where players need to take lots and lots of decisions on the pitch, right? So the philosophy is putting the players in the driving seat, and with the book we've tried to highlight a number of the mental skills that make a difference in football. And we're talking about confidence, for example, we're talking about motivation, we're talking about goal setting, we're talking about your winning mentality, focus and concentration. So different mental skills that can help the player grow as a player, and mental skills that are often either disregarded or sometimes touched upon by the coach, but most of the time not enough in depth, and not with different tools that players can use or different techniques that players can acquire to get better in managing their emotions or building their confidence, improving their concentration, things like that. So in the book, we try to, first of all, explain to the players how these mental skills contribute to their performance. So we try to enhance their knowledge, first of all, help them to understand how this helps them as a player. And then we give them a couple of simple techniques to practice, doing some breathing exercises, for example, to help manage your pressure, or going out to different people in your environment and ask them about your strengths as a player to build your self-confidence. So simple tasks, simple exercises that players can do, and it's a workbook, so they keep track of what they do, they keep track of the feedback that they receive, and in this way they build knowledge, they build their skills that help them to develop as a football player.
Yeah, there's an opportunity for reflection as a player. And certainly speaking with coaches in the elite academies, there are various ways in which they try to get the players to reflect. One of the barriers they describe in this is those players who see it as almost schoolwork, see it as homework. Is there a way that a coach can help a player to push past that, to other than role modeling the importance of it themselves?
Yeah. We're experimenting with gamification. Yeah, so translating the book to an online program that players can access on their smartphone, so they can do the homework on their smartphone, and maybe, so the easy translation to an online tool would be just to have an application that players can access wherever they are, that they can do a review of their training week, they can select a couple of goals for the next week, and then they can do the exercise on the mental skill, and then just make a note on their smartphone that they've done it, and that they can go to stage 2, for example. And in this way you can you use gamification, you can create a game. My one of my dreams is to have like a FIFA psych game for players where you can have like a career. You follow the career of a young international player, and you have to go through all these assignments, building your different mental skills, and you reach next level and next level as you master breathing techniques, imagery techniques, goal setting techniques, all these skills that you benefit from as a player. If you would put this into a game, and I think that would be a very easy way forward. I mean, it's an expensive to develop this, I guess, but but that will be like a good way forward.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it would be brilliant. And years ago, Nike Football had an app that had some videos and games around visualization and imagery. I think Lewandowski was on it, and I used to use that with young players, and they really reacted positively to it. And then a couple of years later, the app had disappeared. So, not entirely sure what the problem was, but I fully agree with you. I think meeting the players where they are at in terms of what are the types of things that they like to engage with, and of course, video games is often part of that, and they're so clever with how they hook players in, adult or child. We've got to use and adopt those tools to engage players. Just to jump a little bit, you mentioned before we started recording that you're working with the Chinese Football Association with some mental health things. Of course, with mental health being such a prominent issue just now, it'd be great to hear what it is you're doing with them at the moment.
Um, so as you and listeners may be aware, the Chinese Super League has started in July. So after the pandemic, and they are working like in two different regions. So half of the teams are in one region in isolation. So just the team together with the staff. And they for 3 months they remain in isolation. Yeah, so to prevent infections. And so the FA wanted to offer some help to the coaches because they were they were expecting some because of the isolation, psychological pressure much higher on the players, on top of the normal pressure of professional football. And as you know, the statistics there, it's almost, what is it, 1 out of 8 players who are suffering from mental health issues in professional football. And if you add the whole pandemic to that situation, you can be sure that there are lots of players who are at risk of developing mental health issues. So what we did was create a program for coaches, first of all, to help them be vigilant, to help them start conversations with players about mental health, about managing pressure. And like we said earlier about the situation in the plane where you need to help yourself before you can help others, it's also a tool for coaches to build their own resilience, to make sure that they have a number of tools available, that they have a social network, albeit online, but the social network that is available to them to talk and to as a sounding board, that they have a plan to build, to make sure that they stay fit, that they do also, rather than spending all their free time analyzing videos of opponents, that they also spend some time just going outside, that they take care of their rest and recovery, things like that. So a whole program for coaches to build their own resilience, and then to help them work with the players to try and prevent as much as possible these mental health issues realizing and happening.
Sounds like interesting work, and I'm sure there will be more available from you in future about your success with that collaboration. I wanted to give you an opportunity to speak about these online resources that you've put together. As you mentioned, like your work with the Chinese Football Association, we're spending a good deal of our time online now. getting more used to it. It's great to see coaches are wanting to use online resources to develop their own practice, but we've all died a death somewhat by webinars a little over the last 3 or 4 months. These types of resources are starting to become available though, and yours, thankfully, I had the opportunity to watch a couple and they look like they'll be very, very useful. Could you tell us more about what they are and why you put them together?
Yeah. So at the start of the lockdown here in Belgium, I used the opportunity to make a couple of videos, online tutorials to to help coaches, for example, build their own psychological resilience. And in these videos, it's what we talked about. It's what you can do as a coach to make sure that you stay healthy, that you stay focused, that you stay emotionally present for your players, even in these difficult times. And yeah, the resources are available. I'm sure we can give the listeners the opportunity to check the website and to have a look at the videos. So I've recorded a couple on resilience. I've also recorded the workbook that we talked about. So I've made a digital version, like a tutorial for the workbook, and I'm more than happy to share the access to that one also with the listeners. And the next one coming up is our book on the sport brain. So we're translating the book. Well, first of all, to be published in English and in Chinese, and then to make it also make also an online version, right? Make some videos on the different chapters. So that's the next project for the coming months, and hopefully this should be available by the end of the year.
No, I really look forward to it. I think it's going to be a valuable resource for coaches, and I'll make sure that the links are available to everyone listening. A couple of final questions for you, Kris. If you had to pick one of your achievements as the biggest achievement you've had, what would that be?
I'd like to mention two, if I may. One is as you always remember your first time, right? So I will always remember the first time that I'm in the dressing room with the players of a professional football team, explaining how the mental side can help them enhance their performance. And as it happens, this was my home team here in Bruges. So as you know, we have FC Bruges, which is the team always contending for the league title here in Bruges, and who's playing they are playing at a European level. And then there's a second team, so we have this nice rivalry in our city. We have a second team which is much less in terms of output the past couple of years. But it's my team. I've played for them when I was young, and my sons have played for them, and my father played with them, and even my grandfather played for them. So there's a long family tradition with Circle Bruges, and this was the first professional team I worked with as a mental coach. So you can imagine that was a special moment. The first time that I went on team building with them in pre-season, and I was able to talk with the players on the psychological aspects. That was one of these if my friends could see me now moments, as I like to call them.
Yeah, that must have been an important moment for you. You said there were two. There's one more you wanted to tell us?
Yeah. Well, the other one actually pretty recent in esports. Last year, about this time last year, we were in Greece for the European Championship finals with our team, and we played the best of 5 against our main competitor. So a rivalry you can compare with Real Madrid versus Barcelona. in League of Legends. It's Fnatic versus G2. So I'm with Fnatic, and yeah, we went to the 5th game in Athens. So it was amazing. We were in a basketball arena, 15,000 people cheering to these guys on stage. The game lasts about 30 to 40 minutes, and then you have a 10-minute recess, and then you have the second game, and then the third game. So in those small breaks, you have 10 to 15 minutes to quickly talk with the coach. What's the main message we want to give with the players? To digest the loss, for example, or to come down from the cloud if we have just won the game, and then to repeat the game plan for the next game. So that was really, really intense, and it was a tremendous experience to go through with the team and with the coaches that I worked with for the whole for about 8 months before. So culminating into that experience.
Yeah, awesome. And like I said, I watched a little on the YouTube channel. It's quite a large team of gamers that you're working with very different personalities, and of course lots of similarities with working with athletes. Thank you so much, Kris. Really appreciate your time and your insight. If you could just let the listeners know where's best to find you.
Well, we just launched our new website, which is mpmentalcoaching.com. So there you'll find background, both from myself and my associate, Eva Maanhout. So there's 2 of us working with the Belgian FA, working with different professional teams. And then we have our private practice working with individual athletes. So MP, so M from mother and P from Patrick, mpmentalcoaching.com is where you can find us. And I'll make sure that the links to the video tutorials will be available in the next couple of weeks. They will be available through the website. At this point, you need a little bit more patience and investigative powers to find them. They're on my YouTube channel, but obviously not public for everyone. But I'm more than happy. Listeners who reach out to me, drop me an email. I can share a link to 1 or 2 of the videos to have a preview. And if people are interested, then they obviously can buy the whole course.
That's really kind of you, Kris, and I hope people will reach out. I think you have a wonderful resource that you've put together, and obviously many years of experience that you've been so kind to share some of that with us today. Thanks so much, and welcome to the tribe.
Thanks very much, Tim.
And that's it for episode 3. Thank you for listening, and to my guest Kris for discussing his experience and knowledge. Check out the links to find out more and to take a look at the online resources Kris has created for coaches. Great to have you here, and it's a pleasure to have connected with some of you already over social media. You can also get in touch via email, thedevelopertribe@gmail.com. The music you are listening to is by BB Phoenix. I hope this finds you well, and look forward to next time.